Brendan Smith, not the best player on the rank, but he's still valuable just in a different way. What do I mean by that? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. In today's episode, we're going to shake things up. The last 4 episodes have been me covering the Sheldon Keefe hiring. It's an exciting time for the New Jersey Devils organization, but I think we all get the point. The Chief has arrived, or the Keefe has arrived. The Devils have a new leader behind the bench. It seems like a majority of the Devils discourse is happy with the hiring. I went to the press conference. I gave you guys some sound bites, but let's get back to our regularly scheduled program in which I break down exit interviews from Devils players, reflect on their season, and give you guys my opinions. In today's episode, we're going to focus on Brendan Smith. Now, why Brendan Smith in particular? Well, I've already done most of the star players for the Devils, but this tweet surfaced on X, courtesy of Daniel Amoya of the Hockey Writers, and he said, Brendan Smith's New Jersey house has now hit the market, listed at $2.95 million. I have no idea how he knows that, but I will take his word on it. And I figured that's an interesting talking point. Why not reflect on Brendan Smith's time with the Devils? Because if we're being completely honest, I think his time has come to an end, and I think he utilized what he was supposed to do. And a lot of people are wondering, what does Brendan Smith even do? What value does he bring to the organization? And I get that people have some mixed emotions in terms of his playing capabilities, and that's what we're going to discuss on today's episode. In the first segment, I will share you guys some stats and where Brendan Smith ranked amongst other Devils players. Then in the second segment, I will give you my thoughts as to whether or not the Devils should re-sign him because he is a pending unrestricted free agent. And then in the third segment, just to give more context, let's reflect on his past 2 seasons with the Devils. And I'm sure a lot of people would like to hear a different perspective on Brendan Smith and the value he brought to his organization, because it's there, believe it or not. When reflecting on the 2023-2024 season for Brendan Smith, he appeared in 63 games. He had 5 goals. That is the most goals he has scored since being a member of the New York Rangers during the 2021 56-game COVID-shortened season. He had 10 assists for a grand total of 15 points, which is the most points he netted since his time with the Red Wings during the 2015-2016 season. Fun fact about his 5 goals, 2 of them came at the hands of the Ottawa Senators. It's a shame that the Devils don't play him more often, because maybe we could have seen Brendan Smith just tally up a few more goals here and there. But here's where we get to the meat and potatoes of his gameplay. Penalty minutes, 61, second on the team, right behind Kevin Ball. Defensive point share, he had a rating of 1.8, fifth on the team. Blocks, 101, third on the team. And hits, 117, fourth on the team. Remember, I think the blocks and the hits category is where the Devils struggled for the most part, because a lot of people have been complaining about their physicality and how they're a little bit too soft. But the one thing I can reassure you, Brendan Smith certainly does not fall into that category. Sometimes he's a little too chaotic for his own good. We see him sometimes get beat a lot by the opposition. Sometimes we see him in a lot of 2-on-1 odd man rush situations that he sometimes creates. And there's been a decent amount of games in which he was on the rink for a slot of goals from the opponent. Brendan Smith is not the best player on the rink, and I think that's safe for me to say, and he'll even admit to it. But the one thing I can respect from Brendan Smith is that he brings physicality, and he was actually pretty decent on the penalty kill, which is why I think he was out there on the rink. The Devils actually had the 10th best penalty kill in the entire NHL, tied with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So that's where I think Brendan Smith really earned his money. But we're going to listen in to a few sound bites from Brendan Smith during exit interviews. And he talked about what's next in his career and what he hopes to accomplish come the new year. Take a listen.
Brendan, you talked about, your next step, your next chapter. I mean, have you talked about resigning, or is that hanging up the skates talk? I don't know.
Personally, I hope it's not hanging up the skates. I have not talked to management here. Obviously, I'll be restricted to the team till July 1st, which is unrestricted free agency. And I know that they have a lot of stuff going on. So at this moment, they probably have their pecking order, and hopefully there'll be some talk and see where I stand. I love it here. I do want to be back, but more than that, I want to be back in the NHL. So we'll see how that goes. And I thought I had a good year and helped out in multiple ways. I know that my voice or my game away from on the ice is almost as impactful or more than it is on the ice. But I'm still very pleased where I'm at as a hockey player in this league, and so we'll see how everything unfolds. But if I'm back, I'll be quite happy because, like I just said in my cliche answers, we did take a step back, but I want to be a part of that club going forward. And I think we have the right tools. There's probably a couple things that additions that we can use, and that's like guys that were injured coming back. It's not even just like additions to the team, but it's like Dougie coming back. It's like a lot of guys that kind of filling in, and I want to be a part of that. So we'll see how that all goes, but right now it's just kind of deal with everything afoot at the moment and then go forth.
I know a lot of people have their opinions on Brendan Smith, but the one thing I love from him is that he knows how to speak, and I love interviewing him. I've interviewed, I believe, every single Devils player from this season and last, and he is one of my top 5 players to interview. Even if he's not the best player on the rink, he's detail-oriented, he's well-spoken, he goes into more areas than I think a lot of players will do during their post-game interviews or pre-game interviews, whatever the case might be. The bottom line is Brendan Smith is one of the top 5 players that I love to interact with in the locker room. And I got to give credit to Christy Flannery of the Hockey News for getting me hip to Brendan Smith before I got my credentials, because last season I was talking about how he should be waived or he's taking up an extra spot. And Christy enlightened me, and she was like, you need to talk to him in the locker room because he's a ball of energy, and that sort of leaks over to the rest of the team. And that's going to lead into my next talking point. Brendan Smith touched on his future, how he was a little unsure. And honestly, it was somewhat heartbreaking because Brendan Smith is a nice guy, but you hear the old saying, nice guys finish last, and this is a business, and he's already put his house on the market, according to Daniel Amoya, which means I don't think his future in New Jersey is likely, but we'll talk about that momentarily. Before we continue, I want to tell you guys about Game Time. I've actually used the Game Time app to purchase myself some NBA and MLB tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. That sounds pretty good to me. That's called all-in pricing. Get a good view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, before I give my thoughts on Brendan Smith and what his future might look like with the Devils, I want to play a soundbite in which he reflects on the season in general, in which he talks about what went wrong for the Devils, what was their demise, and he compares this Devils team to last year's team, and he gave some concrete examples as to what went wrong. And the reason I want to play this soundbite is because I think this should enlighten a lot of people as to what Brendan Smith is like behind the scenes. Take a listen.
Smitty, obviously you were here last year, you were here this year. Where did things kind of go wrong for this group, maybe injuries aside?
Yeah, I don't like
Wrong.
Yeah, the part there where you say wrong. I think that, I mean, it's the best league in the world. And obviously injuries, there's a lot of variables, but obviously injuries was a big part of that. I think last year was, as you were talking about me being here last year, I thought last year we had an amazing year. I think we rode the wave of early in the season where I talked about that's where you kind of need to get your points because then it kind of solidifies you down the end. And we did the opposite this year where we didn't get them early and then we were kind of in a dogfight late. And then that's where it becomes really difficult because everybody's scoreboard watching and trying to find out what they need and how many points and how to sneak out points, and the games get a lot tighter. And I've talked to you about that where like it feels like there's 3 different seasons during the season, and if you can kind of get yourself in the playoffs around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, it really gives you that chance. And when you say wrong, everybody's like measured on the playoffs, right? And that's what we're measuring. I know that's what we're talking about here, but there was a lot of great stuff that we did. But we are in the business of winning, and I understand that, and not making the playoffs it hurts. And in my career, I haven't missed the playoffs much. So obviously late in my career, it hurts a little bit more. So this one's going to sting because I don't really know what's the next chapter for myself and where that takes me. So it's tough. But to put one thing on what did it for us, I'm not sure. I think there's just accumulation of a lot of things. And we unfortunately did have a lot of man-lost games, and that never really helps.
Brendan Smith sounds like a coach. There's no easy way for me to say it. And I think he's well aware that he has the smarts to someday be a coach. And now it raises the important question. Should the Devils re-sign him? I really want to play devil's advocate, no pun intended, and say yes, because he does bring some leadership inside the locker room. But if I'm being realistic here, I'm going to have to say no. I don't think the Devils should re-sign him because there's no room for him. And the Devils, I think one of their goals this offseason is to find more physicality on the defensive side of things and maybe find someone who's like Brendan Smith, but a lot more efficient, if that makes sense. Because Brendan Smith, like I said in the first segment, the one thing I can't deny is that he definitely wore his emotions on his sleeve and he does play physical. And a lot of people say like no one sticks up for the star players. I remember being in attendance for this game. It was around American Thanksgiving Day. The Devils were taking on the Buffalo Sabres. And remember, that was the return of Nico Hischier, who missed nearly a month of action due to a head injury he sustained at the hands of Connor Clifton. And because of that hit, Clifton was suspended for 2 games. First game back for Nico Hischier, it was against that Sabres team. And Brendan Smith wasted no time, and he went after Connor Clifton and got revenge for Clifton hurting his captain. I think that speaks volume as to what Brendan Smith brings to the table. And even if he's not the best out there, he does put in a lot of effort. I can't deny that. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter the amount of effort you put in if the results don't really speak for themselves. And the reality of it is like Brendan Smith kind of put the Devils into a lot of peculiar and uncomfortable positions, but he's not the only one, if I'm being completely fair. The entire Devils blue line was non-existent at times. Like Shimon Nemets, Luke Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, great offensive weapons, but they're not really going to hold down the fort on the defensive side of things. But speaking of which, Brendan Smith, he doesn't really stick out on offense either. And I think Brendan Smith should have been utilized as a forward more often. I remember being in the press box when he was first assigned to play a forward position. I was actually sitting next to Gabby Nordstrom of Jersey Sporting News, and she's appeared on this show before, and we were both just in shock when we saw the lineup combinations. I'm like, oh, no. And Gabby was like, what did you see? Because she saw it before I did, and I think that was a funny story that I don't think I've told on this show. But anyway, Brendan Smith actually surprised me when he was a forward. And the one thing I could say about Brendan Smith is that he's full of surprises. He's not a threat to score, but when he does score, it does electrify the fans and his teammates a little bit, because I think one of his goals was a breakaway goal against the Ottawa Senators. And I think that was his first goal in over a year, because last season he didn't score for the Devils. This year, he walked away with 5 goals, the most since 2021, like I said. Brendan Smith is just an interesting character, to say the least. And I wish him the best, but I don't think the Devils should lose sight on him. And I know what you guys are thinking, but you literally just said the Devils shouldn't re-sign him. Well, they shouldn't re-sign him as a player, but I think there's some sort of role for him, and we'll talk about that momentarily. All right. During exit interviews, Brendan Smith was asked to reflect on his past 2 seasons with the Devils. Here's what he had to say.
Just looking back at these 2 years with New Jersey, what is it like to be a part of this organization, and what is it like to have these fans?
Yeah, now you're trying to get me to be emotional. Like, that's that was probably my highlight of the year, was the Cancer Jam. On top of that, all the guys that showed up for me, that meant a ton. You see, there we go. So that was for me, that meant everything. The fans that showed up, everybody, when I'm leaving the rink, chanting my name because of that. I think that was one of my favorite moments, because it showed what the community is like. And I was fortunate to be with the Red Wings and the Rangers for 5+ years, and I was only here for 2 years. And I feel very close to this fan base, so that meant a lot, and it was cool. So, like I said, if I'm back, I'm going to do it again and try to be even more involved in the community. And yeah, you got me there. But yeah, no, it means a lot. I love it here. My wife loves it here. The family, we really enjoy it, and we like to make this home for a long time. But like, it's a business, and we'll have to see how everything unfolds. But I thought I got real close with the fan base, and it was great to kind of see what they're like and be a part of them.
Once again, it's just I'm running out of adjectives to describe it. It's just emotional when you listen to Brendan Smith speak, and I don't want to see anyone lose their job. I don't want to see anyone get the can, and I really want Brendan Smith to be a part of a Stanley Cup team, because he's been in this league for a while, and he hasn't missed the playoffs often, similar to what he alluded to in one of those sound bites. And that's for good reason. Similar to Eric Haula, is because they actually bring some value to the roster more than what you think, more than what meets the eye. Let's just talk about his past 2 seasons. I think Tom Fitzgerald brought on Brendan Smith because he's been in the league for a while and he knows what it takes to win. Brendan Smith, he's played with the Detroit Red Wings when they were still good. He's played with the New York Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Basically, Brendan Smith has played on playoff caliber rosters. And remember, he was coached under Mike Babcock during his tenure with the Red Wings, and he doesn't have too many nice things to say, but that still goes a long way because he learns what not to do when leading a team despite having championship pedigree. I'm not saying that Smith has the championship pedigree. I'm saying that Babcock had it, but lost sight of it, digressing a little bit. Brendan Smith brought a lot of leadership to this team, and I think that's very valuable. And I think that was one of the reasons why the Devils had a lot of chemistry last season, is because when you bring in veterans like Eric Haula, Andre Palat, Brendan Smith, guys who've been in winning situations before, it really whips the young guys into shape. That's why when you don't see the impact from Haula, Palat, or Smith night in and night out, it's still there. It just doesn't show up in the score sheet. It shows up in the locker room. That's why Andre Palat is one of the alternate captains of this roster. Brendan Smith, the past 2 years, I would say from a leadership standpoint, it was productive because I would argue and say that he was one of the nicest guys in the locker room, and I think he's well respected amongst his peers. Yes, it didn't really translate all that well on the ice, but he was still impactful just in a different way. And this leads into my final discussion, which is I think Brendan Smith, if he decides to hang up the skates, maybe Tom Fitzgerald should entertain the idea of bringing him back as an advisor of some sorts, just so he can still be around the roster and he can probably get his feet wet and be primed to take a coaching position or a front office position, because you just see certain players and it just goes off in your head saying like, yep, they are born to do something like that. And I think Brendan Smith has it. He has the smarts to be a coach. He has the cadence. He has the personality, or he can be in the front office in some sort of role. I think there is a role for Brendan Smith in this league, just not as a player. He's getting up there in age a little bit. He's not all that productive. I think he can definitely have some sort of role carved out for himself with this Devils organization. So I wouldn't say keep that house on the market, Brendan Smith. I really hope Tom Fitzgerald gives him a call if he decides to hang up the skates and say, we got a new opportunity for you and you might like it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Brendan Smith. Basically, not the best one on the rink. I don't think the Devils should re-sign him as a player, but if they bring him in some sort of different capacity into the organization, I'm all for that. Take it from me. He is a great guy, and I just love interacting with him. And I think that should shine a light and give you guys a different perspective as to what Brendan Smith is like as a player. But let me know what you guys think. What did you think of Brendan Smith, and where do you think he'll end up in the future? Because I don't think it's going to be with New Jersey. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.